Welcome back to Faith and Fire. Today is a special Halloween episode of Faith and Fire, and it will actually air on Halloween. So, growing up in the church, Halloween was always one of those taboo topics. We had fall festivals or trunk or treats, celebrations, but we weren't really encouraged to celebrate Halloween and dress up as witches. And there was always this just weird unease about the topic. So I want to talk about it and have a conversation about why that is. Is it a night to dress up and get candy, or is there something more to it? What is Halloween, and what makes Halloween such a taboo topic for people of faith? So with me today to have that conversation, we have Dr. Joy, our favorite presiding elder from the AME Church. We have Shari Sims, our resident modern spiritual yogi, and Amber Touchet, a Halloween enthusiast and with Catholic roots. So, Amber, you are our newest member to the team.
Hi.
Hi. Would love to know a little bit about you and your background with faith.
So I do have Catholic roots. I grew up mostly in the Catholic Church, but I would actually say that I'm pretty spiritually open. So we attended Catholic church fairly regularly, but my father wanted us to be able to choose our own faith. So he actually let us explore whatever kind of religion or church or belief system that we wanted to growing up. And he never wanted us to feel like we were pressured into any sort of religion. So I think that's kind of carried into my adult life. While I do have Catholic roots, I attend a non-denominational Christian church, but I'm very I take pieces of it that apply, and then I kind of have my own belief system.
How very Faith and Fire. I love it. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. Now we know a little bit more about you, and we're ready to kick off this conversation today. So if you can't see me, but I'm looking around the table to see who we're going to start with first. So I want to understand from everyone, how do you celebrate Halloween, and just kind of get a context from each person. Do you celebrate? How do you celebrate? And what's been your experience with Halloween? So Dr. Joy, I feel like I'm going to start with you because you look the most apprehensive.
Of course. Well, I don't currently celebrate Halloween.
Okay.
And I've always had some trepidation about celebrating Halloween because of how I grew up. In the Christian faith, that was just not something we did. And so I did some study around what is Halloween, and where did it come from? How did it get to the United States? What is it? And so what I found is enough information where, no, I don't celebrate it. Okay. But it's not because of some taboo or shouldn't do. It's because it's just not my jam.
You just looked at it and said, this isn't my thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ms. Amber, I know we've already dubbed you the Halloween enthusiast. Yes. So tell me a little about your experience. How do you celebrate?
So we kind of go all out for Halloween, and it's a family affair. So my sister and her significant other actually do quite the Halloween display. They've been on the news. They have this huge thing. They do animatronics in the front of their house. So we have it's a haunted Western theme kind of thing. They have little skeletons that talk and sing. And so it takes all of us to put it together. We'll start putting it up on Sunday for first, and it goes all the way through. We practice up until the big night of Halloween. At my own house, we do kind of a display. We don't have anything that really moves because we obviously help out my sisters, and that takes a long time. But we have lots of costumes, and even Grandma and Grandpa now get in on the costumes, so it's kind of fun.
Wow, so it's like Christmas decorating.
Yes, we go out for Christmas too, but Halloween might be a little bit bigger just because of the amount of stuff that you can go creative with.
Nice, and there's probably also some great sales on Halloween supplies.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you can get quite the collection going over the years, I'm sure.
Yes. Okay, that's exciting to hear. I've got so many more questions, but first, Shari, tell us a little bit about your experience with Halloween.
Yeah, growing up, I did not celebrate Halloween because I was born in South Africa. So it's not, well, at least at the time, wasn't popular over there. So when I moved to the U.S., I was like, it's go time. So I was younger, I was a kid. And so I remember my first Halloween, I dressed up as, I think it was like Frankenstein's bride, or like a zombie bride, or some dead bride. And I was like, so my experience with this is just the most commercial American version of Halloween that you could get. It's just like what I saw in movies, and I wanted to emulate that, and I wanted to experience that. And so I trick-or-treated every single year from 8 to 14. Like when you're too old to trick or treat and you shouldn't be out in the streets and the people open the doors and they're like, go home, teenager. Like, what are you doing out here? But I would go with all my friends, and it was always just a fun thing. And then, then you get to your 20s and all of a sudden now Halloween's like party time.
Yes.
So I would do the nightclub thing back in the day. You would not catch me in a nightclub now. You couldn't pay me enough money to go to a nightclub now. But back in the day, I would enjoy the Halloween festivities in costume. I found a few photos the other day. I was a bumblebee one year, a nurse, all the things, sexy nurse.
All of the women costumes. You just take a bra and then you put sexy in front of it.
It's like that Mean Girls where she's
I'm a
like,
mouse.
I'm a mouse. Exactly. So, did that. And now I turn my lights off so the children don't come to my door and make my dogs nervous. I'm like, I'm the curmudgeon on Halloween now. I'm like, what's happened to my life?
You're not by yourself.
Okay, good.
The lights are not on at my house either.
Okay. Yeah. And it's so interesting, right? I love hearing your stories because I think for me, it's been a journey with Halloween. I think when I was little, I was kind of like everybody else. I was really excited. I was like, wait, there's a holiday where people give me candy for free, and that's the point of the holiday. I want it. Mm-hmm. But I always felt a weird energy around it growing up in the church, and I couldn't put my finger on it, especially when I was younger. I don't know that anyone came to me and said, Halloween's terrible. I mean, I maybe heard a little bit here and there, like, it's the devil's holiday and da-da-da, but you're like, why? There's candy.
Like, what could be bad?
Yes. And then, when you get so by the time I got to those teenage years where, you were saying you were still out there trick-or-treating, it was kind of like, I don't feel like dealing with the weird energy. So I just stopped, and I didn't really take any time to celebrate. I wasn't really excited about it. I wasn't excited about the candy. Probably shouldn't have been eating candy anyways at that age, but whole nother conversation. And I would say as an adult, I do not celebrate it anymore, but not for any faith-based reasons, right? I think that it's one of those things you can't put your finger on. You grow up with exposure to things that shape the way you think about something, and you don't even realize why.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's one of those things, and it's like, ooh, I just don't even go near it. I don't think about it. I don't ask myself, why don't I celebrate Halloween? Well, until this episode, of course. And then I just found ways to be busy. Like I'd sign up for work that day, or I'd be the one who's willing to work a shift or whatever. And my lights are also out. So Amber's house is the one to go to for candy.
Right.
If you can catch her, because she might be out there trick-or-treating too.
Exactly.
Yes.
She said also yes. So here's a question. And I don't know if you'll be able to answer it, Dr. Joy, but do you have a sense of what the trepidation that you said is with the church and Halloween? What's the root of that concern?
Absolutely. Now, what I've discovered when I was doing my research is that it really isn't a faith-based holiday. Mm-hmm. It's not. It really is a ethnic holiday. Ooh. It started as that with the Celtics.
Okay.
And their New Year was November the 1st. And so the day before, they would have this festival.
A New Year's Eve party.
Kind of. But the reason they had it was because they were about to go into the winter, and a lot of things died in the winter. So they would have this festival, and it seemed like a lot of the crops, and so they believed that the ghosts would come on that night and just mess up the crops. And if they made it through to the new year, then they would, go through the winter.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, so the ghost part, that carried through, but aside from that, what I looked at is that it's really not a faith-based holiday. Mm-hmm. When it came to America and got Christianized, right? Actually, when the Romans got hold of it, it got Christianized, and then they tried to make a holiday that would marry faith and still being able to do Halloween. Mm-hmm. And that's where you got the All Saints Day and all those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. But It still didn't have this resonating thing with me because of the spirits.
Okay.
Because they would say they would dress up as ghosts and goblins and devils and witches and all that was for me was like, yeah, no, I don't want any of that. I don't want any of that in my life. And more of that was from lack of understanding.
Yeah.
You know, but that's what you grew up with. Now, and then it just became not a thing. And then the candy piece, and you know, I took my child and her friends trick or treating because of the candy thing. It was socialization, right? It was something social to do. And then that stopped because it got weird with the candy. People got weird.
Yeah, there was a moment there, I remember.
Yes.
Oh, when people started putting stuff in the
Yes.
candy, and you're
Yes.
like, come on now,
Yes.
y'all.
Definitely grew up in that era.
Yes.
Check all your candy.
Yep.
Yep.
And
Everything
then
open, toss it.
Yeah.
I said, nope, I'm not contributing.
Yeah.
And that's how that decision came about.
That's so interesting. So I really want to dig into something that we're talking about, and I would love to hear from y'all. You know, kind of, have you felt that weird energy around Halloween from others? Have you felt that weird energy that we're talking about ever thrown your way?
Yeah, I think so. Because we do, attend church fairly regularly, but then we have this spooky display in our yard. People sometimes are like, they just give us that kind of weird, like, oh, okay, that seems not right. But there's never really any conversation around it. It's always just that, like you said, that weird kind of vibe.
That silent judgment.
Yeah. And I kind of think of Halloween kind of along the lines like Valentine's Day, right? It's just a commercial thing. I never really tied it together to faith for all of the things I think you were just speaking about. And yeah, so there's definitely still that weird kind of vibe, but nobody ever talks about why. You just you get that oh, okay. And then it's cold and then you just move on so how about the weather? The subject just changes really quick, right?
Yes. And that's like the weirdest energy that I think we have in the church sometimes. It's like, what's worse, when people say something and, they don't have a place to say it? Or is it worse when people don't say something and then they just give you this really weird energy?
I think it's that.
It's that.
I definitely think it's that, because I think at least if they say it, you can have the conversation and talk about the why you're really into it or what it might mean to you or how you can celebrate it, not tying it to faith, all of those kind of things.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely the unknown, that weird, just kind of okay vibe.
Yes. And I was actually just listening to the first episode where we talked about what it means to be a person of faith, and Shari helped us so lovingly remember to mind our own faith.
I love that.
And it reminds me of that, right? Is okay, mind your own faith. If your neighbor's celebrating Halloween and for whatever reasons you've chosen that's not your journey, okay, let it not be your journey and move on.
It's funny you said that because my neighbor was on our street.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we came to an agreement. Now, we were in a pie shape. So she had a piece of the pie and I had a piece of the pie. And our front yards kind of overlapped. And I was like, how are we going to do this? So every year I noticed she inch a little bit closer.
It was getting hard to mind your faith.
Her display got bigger and bigger and bigger.
But I couldn't say anything because when Christmas came around, mine inched a little bit closer on her end.
Okay.
So we
You guys
came
got
to
a balance.
We came to an agreement as
Unspoken.
neighbors. We said, okay, you do you.
Right.
You go all the way. I just don't have anything jumping out of my door when I come home. And then I had Christmas.
What a beautiful analogy for faith.
Yeah.
You give people space, right? Because where people may inch a little bit on your side, you may inch a little bit on their side. So it's so important to give each other grace to just believe what we believe and have space to express that without the judgment, knowing that it can just be turned right back around on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love this. So Shari, how about you? Have you ever felt that weird energy in your experience?
No.
No. She said, no, ma'am.
No,
we
ma'am.
were in the club. No one talked about it while I was a sexy kitten.
No, it's another round of shots. That's as far as the combo went. No, 'cause, I didn't go to church growing up.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it's been really commercial for me. And it has been that kind of mass market holiday. Mm-hmm. Now that I'm older, and I am a little bit, I've been able to take a step back and my social life is a lot slower in a lot of departments. But now I'm actually more drawn to the roots of the holiday
Yeah.
And I find that so fascinating, that it is this, I think it's a pagan holiday. So I feel like back in the day, like when the Romans like wanted to introduce their like religion on everybody, that's what they allowed some of the pagan holidays to continue so that people would participate and not, totally rebel against them. So I think like the history of how things came to be is fascinating. And I do feel like, as much as like when I was younger, I didn't care and was totally just like divorced from the background and the roots of what Halloween is. As I'm getting older and like just taking the time to look into the whys and why I believe what I believe and those types of things. Now I'm like looking at the holiday as like, okay, one, it's a harvest celebration from my understanding. Like it's celebrate the harvest. It is, it's harvest moon and like coming up. And so like, I like am more tied to the natural world and things that happen there. So it's almost like kind of, it like works for me in a way, because a lot of like the pagan holidays were really tied to the natural world. They didn't have the information back then. So to them, like things that happened in, the celestial bodies or with nature, like that was really like what they were basing a lot of decisions around. And so that fear of the natural world, from my understanding, is like why they would like have these giant bonfires and they would wear costumes to make sure like the ghost didn't come and like take them or create, havoc in their lives. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's really fascinating, and it's crazy how like far it's come and how different it is now and the way people celebrate Halloween all over the place. But I used to have a friend who was Jehovah's Witness, and like she was like, no, I don't do birthdays. I don't do Christmas. Like I don't do Halloween. That was the first time that I encountered someone, I was 15, encountered someone who had, opposition to the holiday. And it was like, opened my eyes to like, oh, there's something more going on here. I also went to college in East Los Angeles. So a lot of people would celebrate Dia de los Muertos and like Day of the Dead. And so I was like, oh, there's something else going on here. So coming from a different country where none of those things exist, I'm just like, I want to learn more.
Yeah.
So I have like a fascination with Halloween. I definitely decorate for Halloween. Like, don't get me wrong. I got all the spooky stuff, the skulls, the ravens, all the things.
Not quite Amber's level, but you got your own.
I got my own thing on. Yeah, that's right.
So it's interesting you say that, because I'm a firm believer, as I look at what's happening in the world more and the way that the world is melting more, people are moving around, because this is an ethnic. It started out as an ethnic celebration. It morphed into a religious, if you will, discelebration, for lack of a better term. And so it's all mixed together.
Yeah.
And so you were saying the celebrations and the bonfires, you went Celtic on me, and then you came back to when it came to America.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because none of that, they did costume, but it was about the ghost. I don't want the ghost to mess up with my fields.
Yes.
To mess with my crops.
If they're hiding.
And make me die in the winter.
Yeah.
I feel like we need a whole episode on the spiritual realm, because I feel a lot of energy here, but that'll come.
But that's what I see. And it does have some fun aspects of it, but I don't like anything that's scary anyway. So
I'm a baby. I don't do horror movies.
Yeah.
I'm not going to Universal like the horror nights. I would get invited every year and I'd be like, pass.
Oh, we went to Universal Studios. So it's talking Halloween and scary stuff. We went to Universal Studios, and they have the one, I think it's Fear of the Walking Dead or Walking Dead. And there's that ride where you walk through and the people jump out and scream you. No. I got in trouble on that ride because I pushed my son towards a zombie and ran. They're like, take the child. Spare me. I told you to run.
Yeah.
So I love my child with all my heart. I want to make that very clear. And I knew he was not in danger.
I signed a waiver.
However, I do not do scary things.
Yeah, no. And I love Halloween, but we don't go that scary. Like we might do like a few, Maddie calls them, my daughter Maddie, she calls them jump scares. So you might have a few little, we have like this little box that has like a buzzer that you can like do air and it like will jump. And so we like to scare people with that, but that's about as spooky as we get.
So even with the jump box, I know it's coming.
Yeah, no, I'm still scared.
And I still jump.
Yeah.
And I still like, no, I don't want this. I don't want that.
You watch the movies, you hear the music, you're like, okay, something's going to happen. It's going to jump. Don't be scared.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Beautiful tangent. However, so bringing it back, I really wanted to have this conversation because I find myself revisiting the reasons why I don't celebrate Halloween, especially because I'm, in a place of my business where I'm reclaiming my life and I have time back and I'm like, oh, I might actually be available this Halloween. I'm going to have to make a decision. I can't just put it off. So I appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk through it. But as a mom of a young boy, I want to say young boy, but he is 13, taller than me, and sounds like a man. So as a mom of a young man who still wants candy, what advice would you give to me as I am pondering what my Halloween looks like this year?
I would say let him be with his friends and have fun because it'll all be over very soon.
Okay.
He's got maybe a year left of trick-or-treating. This might be his last one.
Like, don't make it mean more than it really means and just let him have fun.
That's how I feel about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree. And I think there's so many different ways that you could dip your toe into trying to re-celebrate. Like I think we mentioned earlier, there's like a lot of trunk or treats, there's fall festivals. So there's still ways that you can kind of like celebrate without having to go all super crazy with it.
Yeah, I'm not going to decorate. I don't even decorate too much for Christmas. That's not true. I decorate. I don't undecorate for like a year. So I don't know that I'm doing it for Halloween
for the
too.
Next time.
Yes.
That's right.
It'll
Early
be
start.
like, are those orange Christmas decorations? Yes. But I appreciate that because it doesn't mean that I have to jump in and be on 10 year one, right? And just like my faith and how I can find what works for me, same thing with this holiday. I can find what works for me and it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say, just because I know your son,
Mm-hmm.
and he's inquisitive, I would say let him do the research on it.
Okay. Give him a little homework assignment.
Yes. Expand his mind so that he's not aimlessly doing something, but he's making a conscious decision that this is what he wants to do, right?
I love that.
But he would enjoy finding out the history.
I'll be sure to tell him who assigned him for 500 word essay on what Halloween means to
In
him.
cursive, no doubt, which they are not teaching these
He
days.
will never get that done.
I really like that though, because I think it is an education thing, right? And you raise them up, you build up that strong foundation of faith, and then let them make their own choice, right? Because they're armed with everything, and you never know, they might totally surprise you. It might be something he just chooses, like, whoa, after I've really looked into this, it's not something that's for me.
Yeah. Or he might look at it and say, yep, just candy.
Yep,
Doing it.
Need some candy.
One more
Need to
year.
dress up.
Or you say, Mom, here's the compromise. Go buy me this, and this candy. Put it in a bowl. Let me get it. Put it in a bag and say that I've gotten it.
No
From
matter
trick or treat.
whether he
at home.
researches or not, that's going to be his reaction. My son is very particular and very logical, and he will tell me precisely what he wants, when he wants it, how he wants it, and where he wants it.
I love
awesome.
that.
Good
See,
for
I
him.
can get all the candy I want, and all I got to do is tell you.
Yeah.
Cool. 2 birds, one stone. Don't have to trick or treat. Love it.
That's actually what he'll do. He'll be like, can I DoorDash the candy to me? I don't feel like
I
leaving
love
the
that.
house.
Wow.
That's so funny. That is funny.
And I think that just brings it around. It's like, at the end of the day, what I'm really getting from this conversation is it's a great example of places where we may have made a lot of meaning. We added a lot of meaning, starting with the Romans adding a lot of meaning. And then we adopt other people's meaning and we just go with it without questioning it. And so bringing it back to faith, it's funny because I will say at the beginning of this conversation, I did not know how closely tied to faith this conversation was going to go. It's going to be faith and Halloween because we're going to use the words together. But it's a great example of faith in general and where we're struggling and why we're having these conversations is sometimes we adopt meaning and we take it on as our own without really knowing where it came from or really treating it with a questioning attitude of why. Do we believe this? Why do people tell me to believe this? Do I believe this?
love
I love the opportunity to question the beliefs that are handed to me. And sometimes you say, yep, that's truly what I believe. But sometimes you're going to look at it and say, that doesn't suit my life. It doesn't reflect how I think or what I think of the world. And that's okay. Nice. Well, ladies, I appreciate you diving into this conversation with me and exploring Halloween on this very special Halloween episode of Faith and Fire. And so I guess at the end of the day, what it comes down to is you figure out for yourself, what do you want to celebrate and why is it important to you or why is it not important to you? Because at the end of the day, you mind your own faith and the only person's opinion that matters is your own. So if you like conversations like this, please be sure to follow us and subscribe. You can find us on all of the podcast platforms, also YouTube if you want to see our beautiful faces. So join us next time as we have another conversation from Faith and Fire.